Planning Commission meeting for February. Commissioners, you have the agenda before you. Please note that case number 3182 for Sheldon's Towing has been postponed. Are there any other changes to the agenda? My mic is on. Can you hear me now? All right. All right. Are there any other changes to the agenda besides the postponement of case number 3182 for Sheldon's Towing?
No other changes.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any changes or additions to the minutes from the January meeting? If not, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
It's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Commissioner Logan, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Ben, do we have a staff report today?
Just a reminder that the March Planning Commission meeting will be held on Thursday, March the 6th at 5 p.m. right here.
All right. Thank you, sir. That brings us to our first public hearing, which will be case number 3181. Stephanie Christina has filed a request for a special exception as provided in section 3.5.6.2, dwellings, accessory districts permitted for property located at 112 Hillside Drive.
Okay, so the subject property located at 112 Hillside Drive is a single-family residence, and the applicant is requesting a special exception to renovate an existing garage into a one-bedroom apartment for use as a rental property. As proposed, the ADU does not exceed 50% of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, and the proposed square footage, 840 square feet, is under the maximum of 1,000 as required by the code. The Land Development Code requires that the primary residence must be owner-occupied, and the applicant did provide proof of homestead at this residence to fulfill that requirement. The ADU standards also require, for a special exception, that the applicant provide the city with a covenant stating that the primary living space will be owner-occupied and that other provisions of the code will be followed, which is a condition of this report. We also know that the applicant might want to investigate if there are any neighborhood covenants that would prohibit the installation of the ADU at this location. We listed out for you in your report all of the standards for an accessory dwelling unit to be approved by special exception in the estate residential zoning district, and the proposal meets those standards. So staff is recommending approval of the requested special exception with 2 conditions for approval. And I will know that we normally see these as a special use, and the reason this is a special exception is because the unit is to be rented.
Okay, thank you. Just a note, there was a typo in the agenda. The applicant's name is Stephanie Christian and not Christina. But any questions on this case?
No.
All right. Any comments or questions from the audience? If not, is there a motion on case number 3181?
Motion to grant the special exception with the 2 staff conditions.
All right, there's a motion to grant the special exception with the 2 conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Commissioner
Aye.
Wood? Thank you.
Aye.
All right, it's granted. That takes us to case number 3183. Walker & Walker Enterprises has filed requests for 1, a variance from section 5.8.4.9 NCO design standards retaining wall distance, and 2, a variance from section 5.8.4.9 design standards retaining wall height for property located at 619 Van Buren Avenue. Okay.
Thanks. So the applicant seeks 2 retaining wall variances for a proposed project at 619 Van Buren Avenue, which we all know is the Theora Hamlet House. The requested retaining wall variances would relieve the applicant from the requirements related to both the height and the distance between retaining walls as prescribed in the code. The retaining walls are to allow for a larger rehabilitation and addition project at the property. The plans will still require the review and approval of the Historic Preservation Commission, and the applicant plans to present the project for a complimentary review at the February 20th meeting of that commission. Section 5.8.4.9 of the code states that in all areas in the neighborhood conservation district, retaining walls shall not exceed 6 feet in height, and that height shall be measured from the finished ground to the top of wall, and that the distance between retaining walls should be a minimum of 20 feet. So first, we'll talk about item A, which is the variance for retaining wall distance. The applicant requests relief from the required distance between retaining walls. The application states that the steep grades to the rear northwest corner create a hardship when using the lot for much of anything. In order to build either a structure or pool, grades need to be somewhat leveled, and also that the retaining walls on site are in disrepair and need to be repaired. The more interior wall will not reach higher than 6 feet, while the outer retaining wall is the subject of the height variance that we'll discuss now in item B. So this is variance from section 5.8.4.9 for retaining wall height. The proposed rear retaining wall at 11 feet 8 inches is taller than the retaining wall height allowable in this district. The applicant states that the northwest corner of the property falls off steeply and that a taller retaining wall is required to maintain proposed grades, and that the steep grades at the northwest corner of the area of the lot make it difficult to utilize without a variance, and to locate the proposed pool for the homeowner. The design choices to add a large addition, guest house, garage, and pool require maximizing the lot using retaining walls that are not in compliance with the requirements of the code. While a topographic map was not included with the request, it's clear that there are some challenges with the lot if the desire is to add on to the existing house, install the new pool and garage wanted by the applicant. While the location of the proposed retaining walls is not visible from Van Buren Avenue, it will be visible from East Jackson. The site backs up to the parking lot for 700 East Jackson Avenue, which is a commercial building. It's an office. This request is unique in that the subject property, 619 Van Buren, is residential, but it backs up to a property that's zoned traditional neighborhood business. If the adjacent property owner at 700 East Jackson requested this wall on the property line, it would not require a variance, as the highest height allowable in the T&B is 12 feet. It's unusual for a residential property to back up to a commercial property in this manner, and while it's unlikely that staff would support a request for a wall so tall between two residential properties, the adjacent zoning and staff's opinion lessens the potential impact of the plan overall. Staff finds that the issues at the site are a compelling reason to grant a variance to build if higher retention is needed. The potential impact to the neighboring sites is fairly low, particularly for the wall height variance, as there are no adjacent residential homes. However, it does appear that the challenges with the lot are because of an ambitious building plan. It's unclear if the property owner has received an easement. Well, actually, we've worked this out with the applicant this morning, but they are going to move the rear retaining wall, the one that we're discussing the height on, in from the property line a bit to allow for the required landscaping that you see conditioned at the end of this report. And so we're still going to condition that as a recommendation of approval here, but they have agreed to move the retaining wall in to allow for the building of the wall and maintenance and to install the required landscaping. So staff is recommending approval of the two variances with the conditions that if changes to the plan are needed after the project's reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission, the revised plans will return to this commission for a new special exception. And the adjustment of the location of the retaining wall to allow for the required 4-foot evergreen landscape screening. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have, and I know the applicant's architect is here as well, J.D. Caldwell.
Thank you, Kate. Questions from the commission?
Yes, it's unclear, I'm gonna call the west property line. How tall is that portion of the wall? Is it over 6 feet? Is it gonna need the evergreens?
Is that are you talking about the
Yeah,
interior wall or the back wall?
There's the photo.
The west?
Yeah, this is the west. This is the north, and this is the west.
I can't see the height.
So the first wall is not to exceed a height of 6 feet, and then, which is the one that's on the interior of the lot, and then the wall that backs up to 700 East Jackson, in between the two properties, is proposed at 11 foot 8 inches. So that's why they need a height variance from the required 6 feet.
Yeah, that's what this is.
It's the height, I can't see.
That's mostly 6 feet.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so disregard the west wall then, okay, so the wall that backs up to Lamar, that's the wall that they're gonna, y'all guys this morning, are gonna move it in 4 feet to account for the evergreens?
Yeah,
So
they're
it'll
gonna
be-
move it in, he hasn't specified as 30 inches.
All right, so then the distance will be between the walls will then move from 12 foot 6 inches down to what? It's 9 feet.
Do you want to come up?
Sure.
Yeah.
I take that to be, it'll be
I
10
think he's asking what the new distance between the two walls will be,
I think the
once
distance
you
will
move
be
it
10
in
feet.
3 inches.
Yeah, it'll be 10 feet.
Okay.
If we move the wall in 30 inches, it maintains a 10-foot distance between the retaining walls.
Okay.
Additional question?
Are you gonna be the one, are you the designer, are you the engineer on this? Or is there an engineer that's gonna do
I'm
the
the
wall?
architect.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to get at, or my concern, I guess, is gonna be just, this will be original, this is not original cut, so we have to backfill it, so it won't be, generally be as strong, right? So, you guys are gonna do the right calculations, I guess, to make sure that that spacing's gonna work out, that we're not gonna have collapse, and then the last thing
Okay.
is where the water is gonna go from the retaining wall.
Sure. We have a structural engineer and a civil engineer on the job, and it will be engineered properly.
Okay.
As far as water drainage, we will be using some drainage at the rear, but most of it is going towards the front of the lot. So that'll be as little impact as possible on that retaining wall. We will provide hydrostatic relief at the bottom of the wall, and we will have through wall drainage if necessary. We will work with the neighbors in order, any inlets, outlets, anything like that. we'll do.
What kind of access are you going to need on the neighboring property during construction?
We can access all of our lot from our side, so I don't anticipate needing much back there. But I saw in the comments that we will need an easement to work on that wall from the neighbors.
Mhm.
We'll apply for that, but almost all the construction will be from the front.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if I'm looking at the wall, I'm gonna kind of orient myself this way, so I'm looking at the wall, you're gonna build it up, here's Lamar over here to the side, here's the rear landowners. So if you got 30 inches space and you're gonna plant trees in that space,
Correct.
all right, so the footing for that wall though is gonna go out.
So if we need to do footings that are more pier-like, so that they drill farther down, we'll do that. We haven't done any engineering for that wall as of yet, but if we also, typically, the width of the footing, if it's lopsided, it's gonna be back towards our lot, not towards the neighbor and down the slope.
So I'm not clear on I don't know of a retaining wall that I don't know what design it's gonna be, but I mean, every one that I've ever looked at, I mean, you're gonna have to have, the footing is gonna go out. I'd have to look at the calculations to do it exactly, but it's gonna eat up a lot of that 30 inches. I don't know if you're gonna have enough dirt space left to plant a tree there, is where I'm going.
Okay, I understand the question. In order to we'll have to go deeper with that footing in order to allow a planting strip, that there's enough dirt for trees and hedge and everything that will be needed to screen that wall. I'm confident that we can come up with a design that will meet it and allow for us to have a planting strip without a footing getting in the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think part of what we're running up against here is that you've got to get approvals from historic preservation, you've got to get approvals from us, and so you haven't done all the engineering yet. Is that
Right,
correct?
exactly.
Okay. I mean, I think for me, it's a little bit different to me if, for example, if there was existing soil that dropped off and you're just trying to work right up to the edge of it
Sure.
versus filling in, 6 to 8 feet of the backyard in order to develop on it. Makes a little bit of difference to me for the variance.
Okay.
Other comments, questions?
I'm just concerned about your water. I'm worried about this house, the house right there, not so much the commercial lot. I mean, it's a concrete parking lot. I don't know, I meant that it would have much of an issue, but that house, there's a house right there next to the Matthews Real Estate,
Okay.
fronting on Lamar.
Okay.
That looked like the lowest place, and so as long as you guys are going to account for that?
Yes, of course. There's a huge tree falling in back there, and if you're talking about I guess it would be the west neighbor of the parking lot back there?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, when the retaining wall comes back in there, it will affect that tree. That tree is almost dead as it is. And I believe it's crossing multiple property lines right there, so we'll have to address that anyway. But we won't be adding water or any site drainage onto their property.
All right,
All right.
that's all I've got.
Anybody else from the commission?
Do you intend to irrigate the landscaping to ensure it's
We will,
viability?
yes.
Anyone from the audience who would like to speak on this case? All right. If not, is there a motion? We'll do these, let's do in reverse order. Let's do the variance on height first. Is there a motion on the retaining wall height? There are two variances. So the first one that we'll vote on is the retaining wall height variance.
I'd move that we grant the variance requested for number B with the conditions, the two conditions that apply.
All right. There's a motion to approve the variance for the retaining wall height, subject to the staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Get the vote. All right. So that variance is granted. And then the second variance is for retaining wall distance, the spacing between the walls. Is there a motion?
I move that we grant variance A.
Okay. There's a motion to approve the variance. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? All opposed? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
They're both granted. That brings us to case number 3175. Calicut, sorry, it's postponed, okay. 3185, the Summit at Oxford Commons has filed a request for a special exception as provided in section 2.6.9 Suburban Center, ground floor residential for the Summit Phase 3 for property located at Perry Boulevard.
Alrighty, subject property is about 20 and a half acres, located primarily in the Oxford Commons PUD with Tract A. This is west of the preserve, south of the Summit Phase 2, and north of the Pearl. The applicant proposes a townhouse development of 144 three-bedroom units as a residential common interest development, and the site plan is the next case. So new condition 9 in the 2019 update to the PUD's governing document allows for first floor residential in Tract A, which this is a part of, if 25% of the commercial allowance for that tract has been constructed. In this instance, no commercial has yet been constructed in this tract, so this request for ground floor residential reverts to a special exception as found in the suburban center. And that also goes for the little portion of land that is not in the PUD and is also in suburban center. I've listed out the full wording of new condition 9 in your staff report. So tract A of the PUD would allow up to a little bit under 400,000 square foot of commercial development, and 25% of that is a little under 100,000 square foot. The applicant has provided a plan of development for the Summit, which encompasses the entirety of Tract A and a good bit of land outside of the PUD. Retail commercial is planned for lots 7 through 11 of the Summit Phase 2, and those lots are 6.12 acres, so about 266,000 square feet. And additionally, there is a portion of Lot 13, which is about 5 acres, that's inside of the PUD, that is also programmed for office space. So There is sufficient room in the plan for the applicant to develop, to achieve the build-out of the 25% allowable commercial. But regardless, this is a good transition of density from multifamily at the Pearl and at the Ruby development to the single family at the Preserve subdivision. And staff believes that this is an appropriate location for townhomes of this type. So staff recommends the approval of the requested special exception with the single condition that the approval is for the plan is submitted, subject to necessary revisions per the site plan review committee. And I believe Paul is going to take lead on the engineering side of this one.
And we did receive public comment on this one, an email, just
Yes.
before the hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's either on this one or the next one. I'm not
Okay.
entirely sure which.
Thank you, sir. Paul, is there anything you'd like to add before we get to questions?
I think Robert outlined this pretty well. So, with Precision Engineering, the company I work for, we did make the application for the special exception that is technically this case. Although we've been working with Joey Moore, who is technically the civil engineer of record for this specific portion of the summit, the townhomes that are, I guess, the next case, which is the site plan approval request. So just to make that clear, I think Joey will be able to speak to the site plan and some of those details better than me. But again, our firm made the application for the special exception because we've been kind of working on the overall summit, overarching project, and just wanted to clarify that. But otherwise, I think Robert outlined this pretty accurately. There is no commercial technically built at this point in the summit, but we have a significant amount of land set aside with a lot of interest going on at the moment, a lot of things coming soon. So, but we are requesting a special exception for ground floor residential at the townhome.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Questions from the commission? Go ahead.
I was just looking at this email.
Okay. Joey, could I ask you a couple questions about the elevations?
How you doing? Joey Moore, JM Engineering.
Good to see you. I was out there today. It looks like, there's a lot of dirt work going on at the moment, but it looks like this development's going to be a little bit lower than the existing portions of the development out at Oxford Commons. Is that true? Or if so, how much?
Are you referring to the development to the east of here?
Yes.
Yeah, ran some calculations off of the topo that we had. The most eastern unit I have on my plan on that road is about 7 feet lower than what their pad is sitting,
Okay.
according to the LiDAR. So, plus or minus a foot on the accuracy of that stuff. And we're about, I couldn't tell where their house was on the aerial, but from the edge of our easternmost townhome to their lot line is like 345 feet.
Okay. All right, appreciate that. And the second floor of the townhomes is going to be about, or I guess head high in the townhomes is going to be about 15 feet above grade there. So it'll probably be above grade level for those houses, but not towering over them. Is that correct?
Say that again.
It's going to be above grade level, but it's not going to be towering over those
No, that's
neighboring
correct.
houses.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Thanks, sir.
And I don't know if there's a two-story house there on that lot
I'm
to
not
the
sure.
east or not,
Yeah.
or, that'd be comparable to what we're gonna see.
Okay. Other questions?
Is there a requirement for, a buffer of trees separating these two? Or
Not, in my understanding with the code is there's no buffer required if you've got residential and residential. Usually we see that when you've got commercial and residential, you've got
Right.
that 50-foot buffer.
But there is I don't know if it qualifies as a ditch, but there's a low spot between the two. Is that
That's
gonna-
correct. I'm gonna call it a ditch. I think
Okay.
the original plan for that area is that's like kind of a detention pond. It's being backed up by that pipe that's going underneath the road. So
Okay.
there is that, I wouldn't call it natural, but there is a stream there that will separate.
Yeah, this is a site plan question, but where does that drain? I was just looking at that. Does it go towards that roundabout?
I'm still playing catch up on this whole
Okay.
master plan, but my understanding is that it goes down towards that roundabout by the Pearl, and goes down to that wet pond that we see between the Pearl and the movie
Okay.
theater.
Gotcha. Thanks, sir. Other questions? All right, is there? Do you have more?
Well, I guess the only other thing is, so the plan to open up the cul-de-sac on Lakewood Hill Drive, so that, take that from being a cul-de-sac to, that'll now be a through street?
That's correct.
Just a point of clarification on that, that was part of the PUD master plan.
Yeah.
Was to include that. That was also previously considered as part of the preliminary plats and final plats that have been proposed for the summit, the different phases of the summit. All of those elements have been taken into consideration.
Yeah, and that runs into Summit Drive, which goes down to the roundabout next to the Pearl, and then where does it go to the north? What's the terminal point? Do you know?
It comes back out towards Ed Perry,
Mhm.
and then also it has connectivity to that road that goes right beside Tractor Supply.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this all goes to our connectivity goals.
Any additional questions before we open it up to the public? All right, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this case? Yes, sir. Please come forward, just come to the microphone and state your name for the record.
My name is Sam Myers. I'm the one that emailed the info earlier. My wife is in the audience, Ashley Myers. We're at 302 Lakewood Hill Drive. I don't know the formalities, but you know, we had several on our street neighbors that are directly adjacent or that are on the proximity or have houses that are close to this opening. So whether it's a formality or not, I'm speaking on behalf of the Myers, but also pretty much, you know, most of the people that are on Allen Cove and West Lakewood Hill Drive. From the email, so one of the issues I think that we have is we talk about residential to residential, and I didn't hear a lot of what went on before. Yes, you know, there were site plans, and there was master plans, but it seems like everything has kind of gone towards weekend student housing. So I don't know if there's a consideration for the board to where this isn't family residential. You can argue that it is, but these are, you know, we have different design, you know, planned homes. We have custom built homes, and now we've got, I mean, we have the Pearl that is residential. That's student residential. So I think that's something that a lot of the neighbors wanted to put forth to the committee is, you know, have that in consideration. I've just got a couple quick points, and this is stuff that I've discussed with, you know, David. We have, you know, the exact things that I have here is stuff that Ashley and I have talked to him about. So none of this is privy and none of this is, you know, private or scandalous or whatever. It's just common knowledge. All right. So our first issue is just going to be on, you know, housing, resale. So I mean, we're already seeing houses sit on the market, whether that's in Oxford, but it's in our neighborhood. And one of the prime locations is 212 Greenbrier. You know, that house has sat there for longer than what I think anybody has expected. Well, when you look through their backyard view has changed since that home was built, whether it was 2015, 16, 17, whatever. So, you know, that's going to be our situation when we go to sell. We're going to, you know, our landscape and our view has changed drastically since we built in 2019. I know that someone's talked about the elevation of the townhouse design, so that was one of the big concerns, because when you go to Greenbrier Loop, I mean, you're sitting there and you're waving at people on the third story balcony, so your privacy is diminished, and that has some type of tangible value as a homeowner. So we just said, You know, all houses are pretty much one story or faux two. There are some two stories like ours. Ours is a faux two, you know, so everybody is on one level. And if we have, you know, I think consideration should just go into the elevation of that second floor, just from a privacy standpoint. The third thing was gonna be the through street. So we already have a road that's long and straight. We already have cars, that drive, you know, I put on there probably conservatively up to 50 miles an hour on that road, slam on their brakes, just, you know, joyriding. They have no clue where they're going. Thought this was a through street. Well, I mean, it is gonna be a through street. And so when that comes, you can't tell me that that's not gonna be, you know, issues, especially when we have kids. We have, you know, we have David Blackburn's employees' kids learning to ride their bike on the cul-de-sac. We have our kids, a lot of kids in the neighborhood. And so, you know, there's going to be issues there, period. You're in a college town. You've got a high school next to you. I mean, the reality is just there. The other point that we bring up too is even we've got David's own contractor or foreman that I'm contacting him, telling him he's driving fast to this cul-de-sac. You know, not for reprimand or anything, but it's like, it's just, it's a natural tendency. So that was relayed, and that was from somebody that's not familiar with the area, but yet he's been going to that cul-de-sac and the cul-de-sac at the end of Allen Cove every single day. The other point that we had was, if we're talking about access, you know, there was a mention of that. There was a meeting this summer with the HOA. You know, it's neither here nor there. We weren't at it, but just maybe some clarity on who actually voted for the HOA to approve the opening. Like, was it documented? Were there names? Was there a roll taken? Was it a quorum? Just something like that would be helpful too, because right now I've got, for the sake of privacy, I'm not going to read out the last names of the families, but I've got 8 or 9 sitting right there in that email that I know, you know, nobody asked us about input. And again, this was previously discussed with David, so this isn't anything that's like new information. The other thing that I guess that we asked to consider is what's going to be the plans at the end of Lakewood Hill. So if David Blackburn's at the end of Lakewood Hill, is it reciprocal? Does he get the same opening with the distance and everything for the new part of the neighborhood? So if we were asked if we wanted to make that a cul-de-sac a year ago, thinking that it was going to be a cul-de-sac, you know, we're like, yes. And he petitioned us and we said yes. And so now when it's open, the question is that going to be reciprocated on the other end of Lakewood Hill Drive? Because there's Oxford Commons over in that area, and they're going to have hundreds of houses over on that area. So that's just something that we wanted to put forth to the board. And again, that was on the email for case 3185.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I appreciate your email. That'll be included in the file for the record, and I appreciate you being here to share it with the commission. I mean, I try to keep track of your points so we can try to address some of them, and if you have follow-up questions, let me know. The issue on weekend rentals or student housing, that's one that Oxford struggles with continually. I mean, we're limited in what we can do in the code in terms of differentiating between residential types. I think all the developers in the room would agree that Oxford's done a lot to be restrictive on the variety of types available, while also trying to encourage as much housing development as possible given housing prices in Oxford. The resale issue, you know, it's beyond, I'm not a real estate agent, it's beyond my expertise to talk about that much. I would say I don't think that's a problem across Oxford, and maybe it's just a short-term problem associated with the clearing that's going on in that area, more so than any intrinsic problem with the area. I understand the concerns about privacy, but I also understand that in something the size of the Oxford Commons PUD that hasn't been fully developed, there are going to be changes in that area and that new buyers need to be aware and to ask questions of the developer, what the plans are and how that's going to impact their properties. The through street, that's two topics really. It's the through street itself and then the connection at the other end of Lakewood Hill. Connectivity has always been a central component of that planned unit development and the master plan. It was controversial, to say the least, when the other end of Lakewood Hill was closed in instead of connecting. I think if you look at the record before this commission, we pushed pretty hard for that to be connected, but ultimately it didn't happen. I think it's still, without speaking for anyone else on the commission, it's still important to have connectivity in our neighborhoods so that there are lots of different options for traffic to move through so that we don't wind up with a lot of congestion. That, you know, there will be pockets where you have lower speeds. Even in my neighborhood, which is an older neighborhood, we have problems with people speeding. I think if you give anybody more than 100 feet, they're going to speed, regardless of the type of the street. And as you said, you're still getting people speeding even while it's a dead end. So there's human behavior that we have to account for as well. And then on the HOA approval, I'll say in my experience, I don't think we've ever had any interaction with the internal workings of HOAs, and Ben, correct me, but unless there's something in the covenants preventing the developer from entering the application, once it makes it to us, we don't have any interaction with the dynamics in the HOA or what the vote was or what was said or wasn't said, unfortunately. So you'll have to work with David Blackburn on that one.
But maybe you can clarify, though, about, further clarify, that was a consideration of the planned unit development and its original
Yes.
connectivity. So
The
it was
connectivity is
considered-
it was an important part of the planned unit development. It's a huge development. It's over 500 acres if you include the parts that are connected to the planned unit development that aren't strictly part of it. It's even larger. It's probably closer to 700 or 800 acres. So there's going to be a lot of houses and more than can be serviced by Sisk Avenue and Commonwealth. And we need as many connections as possible. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Myers?
I've got one for Joey. I don't know if this is something, you know, y'all consider or not, but kind of, and I did not drive out there today, but where the cul-de-sac is, you know, where you're going to connect, you know, on Lakewood Drive, looks like there are a fair amount of trees that are there, at least on the TSC map. You know, would y'all consider, and there's like a little, I don't know, peninsula or whatever of land that doesn't look like you're developing anything on, you know, would y'all be willing or interested in, you know, planting some trees or buffers? I know there's no requirement, but there it looks like, you know, a lot of land that's just, it's not going to be built on.
Sure.
It's pretty much gone. Yeah, it's all gone. Thanks.
Well, I just want to just comment on that, though, Kirk, because the preliminary plat with the infrastructure does provide for frontage trees all along that road. So while you may not be seeing it there, what was previously considered and approved, they're going to have frontage trees lining that road all the way up and down northwest, east, south, through there. So
Which road are we talking about?
well, Lakewood Hills Drive, where it connects, that road will have trees. And then, you know, and then when that road turns to the north or you go back down to the south, that'll also have it. In fact, there's some boulevards along that portion of the street that will include trees as well. So
And I appreciate that. I was just thinking of
I just wanted to make sure, yeah, I know where you were going with it, but I
Of a
at least wanted to
buffer.
make sure that you know that there will be trees along that road also.
In terms of, I was out there today, in terms of buffer, everything except that ditch that we were talking about has been cleared at this point. There's still some woody stuff down in that ditch, but everything west of that current cul-de-sac has been cleared.
Okay. But it still seems like that would alleviate some of the concerns if there are buffers of trees along the east side of this between the two neighborhoods, it shields the view, and it also, you know, provides some noise buffer. It doesn't do a thing about traffic, but, just seems like that would be a way to at least resolve some of the concerns of the neighboring residents.
I just wanted some clarification on this, the cul-de-sac that's being opened up. Is this just gonna be a 2-lane, or something to cut down from people driving too fast could be potentially turning into a roundabout, something we all love to help down? I mean, if you're not doing anything to the circle, then why not try to take precaution and keep people from speeding through there?
So this is where it's kind of, and Paul might have to answer to that. So Precision did the road plans for, you know, those roads to be constructed. I have done the plans for basically the development, so I'm not 100% sure what the plan is for that, but just looking at it and speaking to you, I know that roundabout is, or the existing cul-de-sac would not be large enough to put a roundabout in. You've got to get them a little bit bigger. So property, you know, lines to the southeast, that existing lot, stuff like that, like, can they make it bigger? It might be a tight fit to even make that bigger to get a roundabout in there. But Paul might be able to speak to on the road plans of what the actual plan is right there on that road. I know the north-south road is a boulevard, but the east-west road looks like it's just a 2-lane road.
And I guess not really a roundabout like we see out everywhere else, but more or less something that a lot of neighborhoods have upon entering a neighborhood or exiting a neighborhood.
Something like
Which is something that you have an island in the middle of it.
That's where it is. It's like if you put that island in there in the middle, it's got to get bigger because then you get trucks running through there, and it's like if you don't make it that circle should be about 90 feet if that's the standard size that they use for a roundabout. Like even to put a small one like at Savannah Square, like that one's like 120 feet diameter on the outside, so that just kind of gives you an idea. That extra, 30 feet is going to be tricky to get in there, but I don't know if the road plans have been approved or not by engineering, but.
Right, and I can speak to that some. This is Paul Coscianino. So, I mean, Joey's right. That existing cul-de-sac that's at the end of Lakewood Village Drive, or Lakewood Hills Drive, I'm sorry. That is not large enough to put some sort of circle in the middle or create sort of an obstruction there. But the extension of that roadway is going to be the same roadway that's in the neighborhood now, the same width of roadway, and with sidewalks on each side. Basically, an extension of the same exact kind of minimal city street. And then, as Joey also pointed out, the roadway we designed north and south as it gets over to the main bisecting roadway that runs north and south through the summit. That is a boulevard that's one way north, one way south. This is, Lakewood Hill Drive extension is not some wide, commercial sized roadway.
Thank you, Paul.
I understood about half of what he said. I have trouble hearing.
So Charlie Brown's
Hang on
teacher.
1 second. Robert's going to share his screen, and maybe this may be what you're speaking to, Aaron. Inside of, like on Pin Oak, I think that there are existing cul-de-sacs that were, the road was continued on, and so I think that there's like an elevated portion in the center slight, and it also has a materiality change where you have the like the brick circle on the interior. Maybe that's what you're suggesting. Zooming right there on that.
Yep. So this cul-de-sac at the top left is the cul-de-sac in question. This is kind of to the southeast here.
But-
One there, and then one a little bit further down.
Oh, you're talking about when you enter that neighborhood?
Yeah.
But
I
like,
don't know if that's what you're suggesting in your comment, but.
No, because to be honest, like, everybody drives over that. It's not gonna, if it becomes a through road, that's not gonna slow anybody down.
but in North Point, don't they have some kind of little roundabouts in there?
I don't know how big it is, but yeah, North Point does have a roundabout.
Now, if you could put something like that is above the ground that would keep people from, just driving straight through it. I think it's gonna be a matter of being able to see something that is raised.
Okay.
In my experience, that if you put something like that, even, let's just say it's a rollover curve or some section like that, like, somebody's gonna come through there in the middle of the night, and hit it. So I've just been told that if there's not room for it, don't put anything there in the middle, but, there's the paving and stuff, I've seen that done. I think the Domain has something like that out there. But it seems like it's bigger. But I would, John might be able to have a better answer than I can. I don't know about putting something in there that would be obstructive to travel, at that size.
Well, I think you have to sign it up, say it reflected really good. And my experience is when you start adding a lot of signs, a lot of reflectors on something, it sort of changes the neighborhood character. And people wind up being more unhappy with the final look good. What she's she's talking about, sort of like traffic calming device.
Right.
And that's something that could be effective. But like Joey said at night, I think unless you sign it, reflect it really good, so when headlights hit it, people know it's coming up and it's there. There's just gonna be a lot of signage there. Engineering is not opposed to anything like that. We've already approved the road plans as is. I do think if that's something that you guys want them to, think about, we would just need to be sure that it was signed and reflected extremely well.
Well, there is one in the entrance to North Point, and I think it has like a globe with an arrow on it, and that's been there for 15 years. I don't know how many times people have run over it.
Well,
But,
for now, let's just bring it back, since we're on a special exception for ground floor residential.
okay,
Bring it back to that. We can continue the conversation on the site plan. It's really more of a plat question, isn't it? Given that the roads are included in the plat, and the plat's already been approved, so
fair enough.
we can come back to it. But business at hand, are there any other questions related to the special exception for ground floor residential? Or anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? All right. If not, is there a motion on the special exception? All right. I'll make a motion to approve the special exception with staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All in favor? And all opposed?
Aye.
Is that a vote for or against, Commissioner Logan?
It's for. It's for.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So I believe it's granted? Yes. All right. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank y'all.
All right, so that brings us to the next case, which is case number 3178. Blackburn Group has filed a request for site plan approval for the same development, property located at Berry Boulevard.
Same property, still 20 and a half acres. And again, 144 three-bedroom units as part of an RCID. So for this tract, 214 units are allowed. And these townhomes would be the first residential project for this. So 134 of the 144 units are inside the PUD, and that would leave 80 left over for the tract. Density for the 1.29 acres outside of the PUD is calculated at 52 bedrooms an acre, and 30 bedrooms are proposed in that area. Under the 67, that would be allowed. You'll just granted the special exception for ground floor residential, and parking is calculated at 2 spaces per unit, plus 1 guest space per unit. So this plan would require 432 spaces, and the applicant has to fulfill this requirement with a combination of 2-car garages for 76 of the units, driveways, and 232 on-street spaces. Suburban center zoning allows for up to 80% coverage, and the applicant has proposed 45 and change. For height, buildings in suburban center are allowed to be 4 stories and up to 50 feet. These townhomes are 2 stories and 32 feet to the main ridge. For landscape and tree mitigation, landscape package has been included that indicates parking lot trees, frontage trees, foundation plantings, and required screening that all meet the requirements of the Land Development Code. And this property falls within the 2016 approved tree mitigation variance, allowing a set aside of 14% of the total land in a permanent easement in lieu of tree mitigation as areas of the development are platted or site plans are approved. An updated tracking spreadsheet and tracking map for these easements is a condition of approval. As for building material, the architectural style of these units is very similar to the townhouse units in the crossing. They are proposed to be constructed of wood siding, brick trim, and metal roofing over doors and awnings with asphalt shingles for roofing. Engineering has provided comments related to access, water and sewer, and stormwater management, and staff recommends approval of the requested site plan for the Summit Phase 3 with the 6 conditions that are stated in the staff report.
Thank you, Robert. Questions from the commission?
I'm just not clear on the math here. This, regarding the parking, we've got 76 units with the 2-car garage.
Plus 232, and then there are driveways that are behind some of those garages that take care of, a lot of the guest parking. Yep.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
And remind me what all goes into the 14% calculation? Is that just for this phase, or is it part of is it calculated on the larger tract?
It's counted on the final plat for each of the phases.
Each of the phases. So what counts towards the 14% in this phase? Is it what's in the impervious area map, all the green, or?
Yeah, I mean, they're running a surplus right now.
Okay.
So this in the green is not necessarily included in the 14%. They're setting aside 14% in other areas of Oxford Commons for that conservation.
Okay,
assessment.
gotcha.
Just wanted to make sure when you said green, you're talking about the green inside of the development.
Yep. All right, thank you. Other questions? Is there anybody from the audience who would like to speak on the site plan? Just a clarification. So they're on parking, I guess mostly guest parking. They've got plenty of parking. There won't be any on-street parking on, what is the north-south route? The boulevard?
Right.
But there could be on-street parking on Lakewood Hill and then the interior roads on the western side?
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
proposed yet.
On-street, I thought it was on-street.
Well, I mean informal on-street, sort of neighborhood on-street parking.
No, just service parking inside the building.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there are no other questions, is there a motion on the site plan?
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to the 6 staff conditions stated.
All right, it's a motion to approve the site plan, subject to the staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, site plan is recommended for approval. And that takes us to case number 3186. Oxford Commons Lots LLC has filed a request for preliminary plat approval for the Heights Phase 9 and Phase 14 for property located at Primrose Drive. Kate?
Okay, the preliminary plat approval for the Heights Phases 9 and 14 Is a preliminary plat with 2 phases and 31 lots. The lots are zoned SR, suburban residential. The subject property is located in the Oxford Commons in the Heights subdivision and is separated by phases 13 and 15 from Buddy East Parkway. Preliminary plat approval for these phases, along with phases 6 through 8, 13, 15 through 16, and 18, was approved in May of 2019. That approval has expired, and this application is for a new approval of these 2 phases, 9 and 14. Tree mitigation will be applicable to all of the heights. There's the required conservation easement of 14% for all areas included in the tree mitigation variance agreement from January of 2016. And so an updated tracking spreadsheet and tracking map for these easements will be a condition of approval when we get to the final plat. The engineering department provided comments on access, water and sewer, and stormwater management, and staff is recommending approval of the preliminary plat for phases 9 and 14 of the heights with 4 conditions.
Okay, thank you. Questions? All right. Anybody from the audience that would like to speak on the plat? If not, is there a motion from the commission on preliminary plat approval for the Heights Phase 9 and 14?
Move to grant the request for preliminary plat approval with the staff conditions.
All right, there's a motion to approve with staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am. It is recommended for approval. Moving on to case number 3187, JWM Development LLC has filed a request for a special exception as provided in sections 3.5.1.2.c, dwellings detached, and 3.5.4.2, dwellings attached, districts permitted, 4-bedroom units for trailhead property located at 1016 Molly Bar Road.
May remember this case from last planning commission. Subject property is located on the south side of Molly Bar, directly west of the multi-purpose depot trail on about 1.5 acres. Their property is currently vacant and covered with trees. Y'all approved a site plan for trailhead, RCID of 4 duplexes and 3 detached units. Originally in January of '24 for 3-bedroom units, and then amended to all 4-bedroom units contingent on receipt of the special exception last month. So detached units of more than 4 bedrooms and attached units when more than 25% are proposed as 4-bedroom units are special exceptions in the neighborhood residential district. And the applicant has approved all 11 units in the trailhead as 4 bedrooms. And staff does not have any objections to this proposal. The development is relatively small, and the addition of 11 more bedrooms should not have any negative effects on the surrounding neighborhood. The site is well parked, and architectural changes between the previously approved 3-bedroom units and this plan are minimal. And as such, staff recommends approval of the requested special exception with the one condition that approval is for the plan as submitted.
Thank you, Robert. Questions from the commission?
And the esteemed John Granberry is here if you'll have any questions.
Esteemed.
Esteemed.
Wow.
Come on, we got to ask him one question.
He's esteemed. Come on.
Was this the one that had the old cars? You had the cars, the pass-through garage where you parked
Yes.
cars? Okay.
You have a question related to
No,
that?
no, I'm just trying to make sure I had the right one. 'Cause
That's the one.
I think it was like a 1978 Mercedes and something else you had to park back to back.
Was there a
I don't
question
have
in
any
there?
questions, no.
Okay.
I'm just trying to make sure I've got the right one in my head.
Move on to the next person.
All right. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak on this? If not, is there a motion from the commission on the special exception for 4-bedroom units?
I make a motion, we approve the special exception with the one staff condition.
Motion to,
Second.
and a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, it's approved. Taking us to case number 3188, Shivers Towing has filed a request for site plan approval for Shivers Towing for property located at 1336 North Lamar Boulevard. Shivers Towing.
Okay, this should look very familiar because we talked about some special exceptions related to this last month. The applicant seeks site plan approval to allow for the construction of a commercial building for the storage and maintenance of tow trucks. The applicant received 2 special exceptions related to this project at the January meeting with the Planning Commission. One special exception for allow for the continued use of the property as a vehicle repair and maintenance facility, and 1 special exception for the proposed building height. The property is currently used by Shivers Towing, the applicant, to park and store vehicles. It's zoned traditional neighborhood business. The proposed new building would front North Lamar Boulevard. The applicant also plans to install fencing or screening to shield the neighboring gas tank storage area from the street. A condition of approval for the special exception at last month's hearing was that the fencing material for this buffer must be approved by staff, and then a maintenance plan or irrigation should be provided. That condition is included with the recommendations of this report, though I will note that we received an updated plan from the project engineer, so we do have that in hand, just not in time for this meeting. The applicant does not propose any parking at the site, as there's no office space associated with this use. However, there's a space, should the building change use, there's space on the site to install parking if the building was ever repurposed, and parking could be addressed at that time with the change of use. Regarding the building height, the TMB district allows for up to 3 stories with a minimum of 2 stories. This design was approved to be 1 story by special exception. And I'll remind everyone that it's a little more than 1 story realistically in height at 32 feet 4 inches to accommodate the towing vehicles that it'll house. So it'll read as taller than a typical 1-story commercial building. The engineering department provided comments on access, water and sewer, and stormwater management, and staff is recommending the site plan with 3 conditions.
Thank you, Kate. Questions from the commission? All right, comments or questions from the audience? Hearing none. Is there a motion on the site plan?
I make a motion to approve, subject to the 3 staff conditions.
Motion approved, subject to staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The site plan's approved. And that takes us to case number 3189. Southern Land Holding has filed a request for city utilities that includes a preliminary plat approval for the Julep Phase 1 located on Old Taylor Road. Ben?
Thank you. The commission may recall this case that was previously presented and approved in April of 2023 and subsequently granted city utilities. The property is located on Old Taylor Road, just past the city limits. Applicant's proposing to construct an 855-acre PUD that will stretch from Old Taylor Road to Pea Ridge Road. The PUD was granted for this development by the county in July of 19. This request for preliminary plat is for the first phase, which is approximately, it's just under 63 acres. The phase is consistent with Phase 1 in the PUD governing document. Lots are indicated as neighborhood center mixed-use residential, neighborhood general, and neighborhood edge suburban in the PUD governing document. The lot types indicated are in the preliminary plat match what is shown in the governing document. The lot dimensions by lot type are specified in the PUD governing document and are reflected on the plat. Street types are stated in the PUD governing document and reflected on the preliminary plat that are broadly consistent with the street types found in Section 4 of the Land Development Code. There may be some tweaks that need to be made to those with the roundabouts to allow for fire access. The applicant's engineer did mention that he anticipates making a minor adjustment to the proposed sidewalks that has been discussed with staff, basically to push them back a little bit to allow for a verge area between, so just a grass verge area between the curb and the sidewalk. So it's something that we're aware of, and we've added a condition of approval for that element. Landscape elements, including street trees and the detention pond planting, are indicated that are in compliance with the Land Development Code. Minor adjustments to the landscape plan are needed for some of the parking lot trees. Engineering did provide comments related to access, water and sewer, and stormwater management. Staff recommends approval with the 6 conditions that you have in your staff report.
Thank you, Ben.
Applicant's engineer is here, and I think there's a at least one person that would like to make a comment.
Okay. Are there any preliminary questions from the commission? Ben, just out of curiosity, when we have a case like this for development outside the city that's asking for city utilities and the plat comes to us, does the county record the plat? We're just basically commenting on the plat and
Yeah,
saying.
but there's a modified signature sheet that reflects both,
Okay,
both the city and the county reviewing it and approving it and signing.
thank you. All right, is there anybody from the audience who would like to speak? Yes, ma'am, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Janice Antonow. I live in Ridgeland Heights subdivision. I'm here on behalf of the adjacent landowners to this development and residents in Ridgeland Heights subdivision and Windsor Falls subdivision. Dr. Conway Dabney is here. He's a landowner of a property adjacent to this development, and Christina Davis is president of the Ridgeland Heights Subdivision Neighborhood Association, and I've communicated with the folks from Windsor Falls. So I want to start off by saying that I'm aware of the need for additional housing. I'm very aware of it. I think that this is going to help a lot. I wish that we had a way to deal with the traffic that goes along with it, but that's an issue for another day. What I'm here to discuss tonight in relation to this development is stormwater management and erosion control. This piece of property is approximately 65 acres. The entire Julep development is going to be 800 and something acres. So this is just the beginning. So it's a good time to talk about some of this stormwater and erosion stuff, because I think it's going to be an ongoing issue. This development and the properties that I just mentioned, the subdivisions and the adjacent properties are all in the same stormwater basin. And we in Ridgeland Heights and other parts of this area have been dealing with problems associated with this basin for about 3 years now. On the property that's adjacent to this, there's a pond that's on Dr. Dabney's property. And further downstream, there's a large lake that also belongs to the Dabneys. It's partly in the county and partly in the city. And it backs up to the Ridgeland Heights subdivision. The pond that had some of the best fishing in the county now has dead fish in it. There's no longer any viable life in that pond. And looking at it from an aerial view, it's greened. The lake behind my house used to be clear and blue, and now it's brown. And the fish are few and inedible because of something I'll mention in a minute. The Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality is investigating the source of this contamination. They have taken water samples, and we expect to get the results in 2 or 3 weeks. So we know that in this area, there's a problem that exists. So with 63 acres being developed upstream of these properties in the lakes, we really need some assurances that we're going to be protecting our existing citizens and their property from damage and possible health hazards. To start off with stormwater, this site according to the information that came to you folks, is going to be, the stormwater is going to be draining into what is an unnamed tributary of Bernie Branch. And one of the questions that I have, the first question, is that tributary, the, what we call the creek, that is behind the homes on Whippoorwill Lane and behind the homes on Windsor Falls Boulevard. Is that where the water is going to go? Okay. Well, those two areas, during probably about 12 years ago, we had a couple of years where we had torrential rains. Some of you may remember that. That was the time when the city added the 100-year storm requirement to the stormwater ordinance, which now I think that's gone. But at that time, there was some erosion just from nature, from the rain. One person lost their storage unit that fell into the creek. So we know that that creek has the potential to erode and cause damage to the properties. There are 11 houses that back up to that on Whippoorwill Lane, and there are 12 houses that back up to that creek on Windsor Falls Boulevard. So, and also, another question is the storm water going to enter the lake before it runs off into those ditches?
No, ma'am, the stormwater from this development should go directly into the creek. The lake drains into the creek, but this stormwater should not enter the lake that you're talking about.
Okay, and it won't enter the pond on the Dabney property either?
No, ma'am, it shouldn't.
So it's going to bypass those two bodies of water and just enter that creek?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is this development or this portion of the development following the city's or the county's stormwater ordinance?
Ours.
Okay, it's the city's. That's good. How is that going to be monitored?
You mean during construction? Or-
During construction and then after
Yes.
construction? Because you're going to have a lot of,
Yes, ma'am.
new pavement.
Any development in the city or that has to meet our standards will have to be certified before we will sign off on plat or certificates of occupancy. So I think for this phase, there's multiple, maybe 3 retention ponds just for this phase that will have to be built and certified to us before I will sign a final plat for it. So,
Okay.
yes, ma'am, that's how we have sort of checks and balances on that.
And those detention ponds are going to be sufficient to keep that water from storming through that creek and eroding the property?
Theoretically, yes, ma'am.
So theoretically, those folks will be safe, but we only have that theoretically.
Yes, ma'am.
What do they do if and when their property starts to erode?
Well, they can start by calling us, and we will do what we can to investigate the cause of any erosion that's occurring there. The developer contractor will be required to submit, plans to the Department of Environmental Quality before they're even allowed to begin construction, if they haven't already done that. And, if there's any silt or any erosion that leaves that site, hits that creek, comes downstream, they will be answerable to us, the county, and DEQ. So, they should be protected pretty well. And there will be inspections that go on during construction to make sure that erosion control is in place and operating. And if it's
Okay.
not, we will stop any construction until they fix that.
All right, my second question was about the erosion control. We know that part of the problem we're having now, this is an ongoing problem that we're having. We're not just This isn't just theoretical. We have real problems, maybe dangerous problems going on there. So the erosion control, we know that part of the problem that we're experiencing is because of insufficient and unmonitored erosion control mechanisms that in the county. And it's been a serious problem, and DEQ is looking into it. But again, it's erosion control. Is that the city's ordinance that'll be followed? Okay, and, you know, even more importantly than the stormwater, well, not really more importantly, but probably more likely to be a problem, will that be monitored to make sure that those erosion control devices or whatever are in place?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I've seen so many developments where, you know, they've got silt screen and they've got bales and stuff, and they're rolling down the hill, and nobody's doing anything about it. And in some places, it doesn't matter very much, but in a place like this where we know there are existing problems, I think it's really important.
Yes, ma'am. And, you know, I can think of one example on Pea Ridge Road from a case that's pretty old at this point, but there was a development right there at the end near South Lamar. And during the construction phase, the erosion control measures failed, and the neighborhood behind them was getting a lot of silt and everything. And code enforcement was called, and they got a stop work order put in place, and they had to improve the erosion control. So it is an issue in that area with the topography and with the soils, and, you know, there will be inspections, and they're being held to the city's standards. But I think the concern is worthwhile. And a lot of these questions are probably better for the esteemed Mr. Granberry to speak on, if you'd like to come.
Yeah. I mean, we have real concerns. I mean, I wish you well with your development, believe me. We need the housing, but.
Believe me, I understand all too well Oxford and Lafayette County's soil types and the ability of the stormwater to erode them and transport sediment downstream. So we have, in this plan, it's over 5 acres, so we're required to submit to DEQ,
Right.
LCNOI, Large Construction Notice of Intent. And in that, we are held to not only the city standards and the county standards, but also DEQ's guidelines and regulations as it relates to stormwater discharge, the Clean Water Act, everything that goes into it. In the LCNOI, we are required to, the contractor is required to have certified personnel that perform bi-weekly inspections, and within 24 hours of any rainfall event, they're also required to maintain and inspect and record, keep a ledger of all of the daily reports that they perform, identifying any issues that they've had with failed BMPs, best management practices, and the action that they took to turn around and address those issues.
Yeah.
So that is how we.
John, do they submit those to DEQ?
Yes, they keep a ledger of them, they keep a record of all those is kept on site. It has to be kept on site, and then if there is an issue, you know, they can refer back to that. But yeah, DEQ will check that periodically.
So because we've had problems with potential toxins, we're wondering if you're required to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan?
We are, and we do.
You do?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, that's also a part of the submittal.
Yeah.
The SWIP is.
And that's through the EPA, is that correct?
It trickles down to
Yeah.
DEQ, actually governs. our-
DEQ is the local steward for EPA.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I have my questions answered about who's going to monitor, and we hope frequently enough during construction and after construction. Okay, so I hope you all will keep this in mind for the future phases of this development. It's all part of that same basin, and it's really, really fragile. The site that we're talking about, it's not a historic site, it's just ordinary neighborhoods. William Faulkner used to party at the lake, which maybe makes it a little historic. And along the hills, along the lake is where the National Guard set up their camp when, during the integration of Ole Miss. So that I thought was something that was interesting. I know you folks have a hard job, and trying to keep track of all this stuff, it makes my head spin, but I appreciate your time, and keep us in mind when you're doing these approvals. One thing that I am going to request, I understand that the stormwater plan is not complete yet. If at all possible, could you postpone the approval until that stormwater plan is completed and presented to you publicly so that we'll all know what is in it and if there's something further that we need to address?
Yes, ma'am. I'll speak to that. Having seen the stormwater plans, I'm not sure anybody really wants it presented publicly. I mean, how long is the stormwater plan that was submitted so far?
It's probably 200-300 pages.
Yeah. So, I mean, they have to do a lot of modeling associated with it, so I'm not sure it's practical. I understand your concern, for sure. I'm just not sure that it's practical to present the details, because it's a very technical submittal. And generally, we rely on John and the engineering department to let us know if there's anything that looks like it might be a concern.
If it helps Dr. Antonelli, you know, if they approve this tonight, it'll be pending.
It'll be conditional.
approval of the storm.
Yep.
It'll be a condition of approval. So if, say, for instance, they issue approval tonight, pending approval of the stormwater management plan, until we officially approve it, they can't move forward.
Okay.
So-
And does this go to the alderman after?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Well, if there are any changes in the stormwater plan, if there are additional basins or anything else, could you articulate it to the alderman so we'll at least hear it? And
Yes,
the
ma'am.
public will hear it at that
Absolutely.
point? Okay. Well, I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate your attention to this.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming, and thank you for the history notes as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the preliminary plat? If not, is there a motion?
I would move that we grant the preliminary plat approval with the 6 staff conditions.
There's a motion to approve with the 6 conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Commissioner Logan?
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am. The plat is recommended for approval to the Board of Aldermen. That takes us to our final case of the evening, case number 3190. MV Commercial Construction LLC has filed a request for site plan approval for Colonnade Self-Storage Facility for property located at 1669 Bainbridge Street.
All right, subject property is about 1.6 acres in Colonnade Crossing, just north of where they're building Specialty Orthopedic and Myers Apothecary. The applicant has proposed a 3-story climatized self-storage facility with a footprint of a little over 35,000 square feet and a gross footage of over 104,000 square feet. Self-storage facilities are special exceptions, and the applicant was granted that at the November 24 meeting. For parking, 4 spaces are required, and the applicant has provided 5, which is the 125% maximum. Coverage is allowed up to 80%, and the applicant has provided a little bit over 70. And for building heights, they're allowed up to 50 feet, not more than 4 stories, and the applicant has proposed 32 foot 8 inch and 3 stories. For landscaping, landscape package has been included that indicates parking lot trees, frontage trees, foundation plantings, and required screening that all meet the requirements of the LDC. And as the site was previously cleared, no tree mitigation is required. For building materials, the proposed elevations indicate the primary facade materials will be brick veneer with metal panel accents and tinted glass windows. And as always, a separate approval will be required for signage. Engineering has provided comments related to access, water and sewer, and stormwater management, and staff recommends approval of the requested site plan with the 3 conditions that are in your staff report.
Thank you, Robert. Are there questions? Comments from the audience or online? All right, hearing none, is there a motion on the site plan for Colonnade Self-Storage Facility?
Make a motion we approve with the 3 staff conditions.
There's a motion to approve with the 3 conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Who's the second?
It was all over here. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
We are adjourned. And